My dear friends, why is this week's Torah portion, Genesis 47:28, through the last verse of the first book of the Torah, Genesis 50, it's called Vayechi. Why is this Torah portion ideal for a synagogue like ours, where your Jewish identity only grows and gets better as you grow older? I will answer that question the way most rabbis typically answer questions, by asking another question. Two questions, actually. My first impolite question is, how old are you? And my second question is, are you old? Perhaps the greatest philosopher of the 20th century, Jewishly, theologian Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, he used to say that in American culture, it is less rude to ask someone how much money they have or the intimate details of their sex life than it is to ask them how old they are. We spend zillions of dollars in this country trying to cover up the signs of growing older. But the truth is, we live with a strange paradox. On one hand, we all want to grow older. And on the other hand, none of us want to be too old. And so far, no one has figured out how to reconcile these two desires. How old is old? It depends on when and where you live. If you had lived in America in 1900, 47 would have been very old, because that was the average life expectancy in this country in 1900. How old is old? To my college-age daughter, Julia, 30 seems old. To my oldest daughter, who is 27, 40 seems old. If you are 50, 80 seems old. And if you are 80, 80 seems old. But the truth is, as my childhood rabbi in Dayton, Ohio, Jack Reamer, teaches, how old you are is not only a function of numbers, it is also a function of your health, your disposition, and your spirit. Spiro Agnew got it wrong. He said, if you've seen one slum, you've seen them all. That may be true of slums, but it is not true of human beings. If you have seen one 80-year-old, you have seen only one 80-year-old. For elders are not all the same, as those who make Temple Israel their spiritual home know, whether it's the sixth graders tonight or the 80-somethings here. In Joseph Telushkin's great book on Jewish humor, the story goes that a man comes to an insurance company in Israel, and he wants to buy a policy. They say to him, how old are you? He says, 75. They say, go away, we don't sell policies to people that age. He says, but you sold one to my father last week, and he's 95. They check the records, and sure enough, they find out that the man is right. They tell him to come in next Monday and see if they can straighten this out. The man says, I can't come in next Monday. Why can't you come in next Monday, they ask. I can't come in next Monday, he continues, because I'm going to my grandfather's wedding. The agent says, really? How old is your grandfather? The man says, 115. The agent responds, 115. Why does he want to get married at that age? The man replies, he doesn't, but his parents are pushing him. The point of the story is that age is relative. If you have the wrong relatives, they can really age you quickly. And if not, you can live a long life and not be considered old. Why this talk about age tonight? Because in this week's Parsha, Vayechi, Jacob grows old. And in this week's portion, his son Joseph also grows old. It has been noted, therefore, that this is the first example that we have of a sandwich generation. It's not uncommon nowadays for people in their 50s and 60s to take care of parents in their 80s and 90s, but Jacob and Joseph, Yaakov and Yosef are the first examples of such a relationship we have in the entire Torah. They're the first example of two older adults who care for each other spiritually and of one who must care for the other physically, and it happens this week. So how did they manage? Remarkably well. Joseph the son lived in the capital city where he functioned as prime minister of Egypt. Jacob, the father, lived with the rest of his sons in the boonies in Goshen, some miles away. Joseph came to visit him as often as he could, considering that he was a very busy man. He had a whole country to worry about. And Jacob, the dad, did fairly well. He learned not to interfere in the lives of his kids. He learned to let go and to let them raise their children their way. And Jacob also did three things before he dies this week that showed he still had a mind of his own, even to his age of death, 147, according to the Torah. The first thing he did before he died is he gathered his children around his bedside and he gave them his ethical will. That's not where you give diamonds. It's when you remind your kids of what matters most, including what disappointed him, what brought him pride, and then he blessed them. By doing that, Jacob begins a custom and tradition Jewish parents have continued for centuries. My father of blessed memory gave me and my family his ethical will so that his values would live on. I framed it, kept it opposite my work desk at home for decades. The second thing Grandpa Jacob did was rewrite his other will, the one that you all know when you go to estate lawyers, and he makes his grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh, equal heirs with his own children. Maybe this was Jacob's way of saying thank you to his son Joseph for all the care he had given dad in his old age. Perhaps it was a payback for all the heartache this son Joseph suffered from the years his brothers sold him into slavery and the years after that when he was in prison. And Jacob does a third thing. As he's about to bless his grandsons, something very interesting happens. Joseph, the son, arranges his boys before their grandfather the traditional way, with the favored elder son on the right and the youngest on the left. But Grandpa Jacob switched his hands, placing the favored right hand on the youngest when it was supposed to be on the oldest. So Joseph tries to correct his dad, knowing how much his family had suffered because of parents who favored the younger child. Remember, first with Abraham, then with Isaac's kids, then with Jacob's own kids. So Joseph, who was himself the younger child, says to his father, "Enough, Dad, let's stop this game already." When Joseph says that in this week's Torah portion, Genesis 48:19, it's clear that Joseph has changed and grown in his older age. Joseph, who was the younger son, was the favorite growing up. But he saw how much harm that had done to him and to his siblings. And so he says to his father in the Torah, tactfully but firmly, enough, Dad, enough already. Let's cut it out. Grandpa Jacob is 147. He's older than Joseph, who's 110. So it's harder for Jacob to change, but Jacob does the most remarkable thing. Forget for a moment who gets the right hand and who gets the left. What's remarkable is that Grandpa Jacob gives the two grandchildren one blessing. He says the same thing to both of them. He says, as I blessed those 6th grade boys, Yisimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chimnashe, may future generations of Jews bless their sons by saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. Unlike the 12 separate blessings Jacob's going to give to the 12 separate sons, Jacob gives his grandsons one joint blessing. And here's another remarkable thing. These grandsons, who are also brothers, they accept it. Neither one says to the other, no fair, I want my own blessing. Instead, they cheerfully and gratefully accept the joint blessing, and that's the blessing Jewish parents are to offer upon their sons on every Sabbath evening like tonight. Daughters are blessed, may God make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, while sons are blessed with this week's words. Yisimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chimnashe. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh, meaning, as I tried to say, may you carry forward the life of the Jewish people, and may you get along with your siblings and family members the same way these boys got along. May you not compete or be jealous of your sisters or brothers. Isn't that every parent's deepest wish, that their children may get along with each other? Grandpa Jacob teaches us with his blessing over his grandkids that people can still grow and change, even well past age 100. Joseph, his son, who is also up in years, grows in wisdom when he tells his father, do me a favor, Dad, please don't choose one of my kids over another. I loved it when you did it for me many years ago. It made me feel so special, but I'm older now. And I realized that it wasn't the right thing to do. So please don't do it to my children. Joseph was older than anyone in the sanctuary when he said this. But he was still young enough and wise enough to grow, to learn, to change. As one of my favorite teachers used to say, unlike dogs, you really can teach older people new tricks. And even more important, you can teach people as they grow older not to trick anymore. You can teach them, or better yet, life experience can teach them, or they can teach themselves to become better people, mention, even up to and especially in your older age. The story of Joseph this week proves it. The story of Jacob proves it. Maybe that's why this portion is named, and he lived, Vayechi. Even though this is the week where Jacob and Joseph die. Jacob will die at age 147, Joseph 110. But as long as we still have breath, as long as we still have life and mental faculties within us, there is still time to change and make amends. There's still time to share blessings, to become greater blessings to those whose lives we touch. And so, in closing, this week we close the book of Genesis. If you'll say chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. That's what we're supposed to say whenever we close a book of Torah. It means be strong, and let us strengthen one another, realizing that among the greatest gifts of love God has given us as we grow is the ability to change, Even in older age, people can heal the wounds and hurts they caused when they were younger. They can make amends for the mistakes of their youth. People can come closer to each other as they grow older and wiser. And for those of us, I conclude, striving to carry forward the life of Judaism in this time and place via temple, no matter what our age, we can inspire a new love, a new way into Judaism among younger generations of Jews who have either fallen away or feel that they haven't been able to find their way into the timeless wisdom and way of life Judaism offers each and every one of us. May God bless each of you. May God keep you in the spirit of Jacob and Joseph, and may you never grow old, even if you think you are. Amen.